Welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into the installation of our Pallnet Billet aluminum fuel rail kit for the 1984 through 1989 Z31 300ZX platform. Whether you're upgrading for performance or replacing old components on a factory EFI system, this video will walk you through all of the steps for install. Before we begin, we need to take a few safety precautions. You'll be working with a potentially pressurized fuel system, so please take the following safety steps. Wear safety glasses, work in a well-ventilated area, keep a fire extinguisher nearby, and most importantly, disconnect the negative battery terminal after depressurizing the fuel system. First, let's depressurize the fuel system. Start by removing the gas cap to release any pressure in the tank. Then unplug the fuel pump relay or disconnect the fuel pump wiring, start the engine and let it run until it dies. Now disconnect the negative battery terminal. Now remove both rubber hoses from the factory fuel rail. If your hoses are old and cracked, now is a great time to replace them with EFI rated 5/16 inch fuel hose. You will need to remove the upper plenum to gain access to everything, and remove your original fuel rail assembly. Once you've gotten to that point, we can move on to installing your new fuel rail. Pallnet offers two different rail types for the Z31 market. The 11mm O-ring style, compatible with DSM 450cc, 7M GTE Supra 440cc injectors, and select Bosch injectors. The 14mm O-ring style is designed for modern Bosch EV6 injectors that are 60mm in length from O-ring to O-ring. For both rail styles, they require the OEM Z31 lower fuel injector O-rings. For both the 11mm and 14mm O-ring style injectors, you will need to remove the round cut O-rings from the bottom of your fuel injectors and replace them with the OEM Z31 square cut O-rings. Do not double stack the O-rings, as this will cause leaks and potential fire hazards. Next, install the injectors into the fuel rails. Lubricate the O-rings with wheel bearing grease or some WD-40 and carefully insert them into the rail. Pushing and twisting at the same time is the best method for this to avoid tears that could cause leaks. Next, we're going to have to remove these small spikes or tangs that are on the lower plenum. Tape off your lower intake manifold with a few layers of painter's tape or cover it up with shop rags, as you're going to be making a decent sized mess with metal shavings and dust. You can remove these spikes with either an air saw or possibly a die grinder or Dremel tool. If you really want to make quick work of it, you can grind them down with an aluminum rasp and an angle grinder. But beware, this takes a ton of material off if you're not careful. Once you've done that, you can install the fuel rails and injectors into your lower intake manifold and verify that they clear where you ground down the tangs. Align them carefully with the lower intake manifold and secure the fuel rail using the provided mounting brackets. Tighten the intake manifold bolts first, and then the fuel rail mounting bolts. Next up is the fuel pressure regulator installation. On Z31 vehicles, mount the regulator on the passenger side near the fuel lines. The Z31 was designed with a push-through fuel filter, but for performance applications we recommend relocating it after the fuel rail on the return side to prevent lean conditions. Our reasoning behind this is when the fuel filter is on the return side of the fuel system and it gets clogged up with debris, it typically will create a restriction which will raise fuel pressure rather than hindering flow, like on the supply side. Ensure all of your fuel hoses are routed properly and all clamps secured. We like to loop the rear rail connections together and use the front outlets for your feed and return. One rail will be your fuel inlet from the fuel pump, and the other rail will serve as your fuel return to your pressure regulator. This diagram is a good visual reference of what your fuel hose routing needs to look like. Next, we're going to move on to setting your base fuel pressure. Reconnect the negative battery terminal. Cycle the key to the on position a few times to build fuel pressure and check for leaks. If no leaks are found, you can attempt to start it and see if it will run. With the engine running and no vacuum hose attached to the fuel regulator, set the base fuel pressure at 32 psi for OEM EFI systems and 43.5 psi for aftermarket ECU setups, and that does include Nissan shipped factory ECUs. Once your fuel pressure is set, tighten the jam nut and reconnect the vacuum hose, and go for a drive or a tuning session. As with all aftermarket fuel system parts, make sure you continually check for leaks and other issues, as we are not responsible for any problems that arise from misuse or improper installation. We also strongly recommend to keep a fire extinguisher in your vehicle, as it is a classic car and it is a good practice to implement into classic car ownership. That's it. Your Z31 is now equipped with a Pallnet Billet aluminum fuel rail kit. If you found this guide helpful, hit that like button and subscribe for more Z31 performance upgrade content. Got any questions? Reach out to us directly through the Godzilla Raceworks website or our social media pages. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.